All right.
All right, this is the December 2nd, 2020 committee meeting operations and oversight for the CSS Workforce New York Board. Present with us today from board members, we have Bruce Boughton, Jeanette Frank, Judy McKinney Cherry as chair, Jamie Johnson. We also have guests and staff. Guests, Sally Rasu, staff present, Melissa Johnson, Brianne Widmer Mason. We're going to call you staff, Shelley. I apologize. I probably shouldn't technically put you under. Shelley Madden as a super guest star. Phyllis Ballier as staff. Keith Guthrie as staff, and of course myself, Dan Porter, as staff. We do not have quorum yet, Judy, but we'll keep an eye out for Joanne or Bill, and then you can convene at that time. So that all being said, it's all yours.
All right. Thank you. Thanks, Dan. So following our agenda, I'll ask first if there is any conflict of interest, if there's any sort of disclosure that needs to be made by anyone on the call. All right, hearing none. If it is okay, we will come back to the minutes once we have quorum.
Bill has joined us, so we now have quorum.
There we go. Thank you.
Thank you.
Excellent. Excellent. Thank you, Bill.
Sorry, I'm late.
You're critically needed. Okay, so let's go back to the minutes. These are the minutes of our November 4th, 2020 meeting. Can you please, I would accept a motion to accept the minutes.
I'll move it, Jamie.
Thank you, Jamie. And
Second, Jeanette.
Thank you, Jeanette, for seconding. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you. Any nays or abstentions? Okay. Moving right along. Our next agenda item is the youth program with the youth program update.
Okay, good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for letting me talk to you a little bit about the Emerging Workforce Program. Starting with goals and approvals, team will enroll a minimum of 75 new individuals in PY20. To date, 38 have been enrolled. That's at 5 months in, so I think we're doing pretty good. Emerging Workforce team will target 19 work experience-based trainings. To date, 12 have been engaged in new work experience-based trainings. 9 are currently active. We only had 1 new one for the month of November. That's just the way it is. Emerging Workforce team will target 12 training opportunities. That's either ITAs or alternatives. To date, 8 have been approved for ITAs, 1 withdrew, and 1 individual alternative training. We didn't have any new trainings begin in November. Development of the program, month of November, we had 4 referrals and 7 enrollments at the time of the writing of this report. Since then, we had 1 additional referral and 1 additional enrollment. So I started off by saying 38 have been enrolled for PY20. If you look down here later on in the chart, you're going to see it's 36. And that discrepancy is because 2 of them are re-enrollments, and I'll talk a little bit more about that. Youth referrals, we're down. We're down 4 to 5 for this month. The chart breaks it down. I have it broken down by quarter and career center area. Quarter 2 just refers to last month. I've excluded November from this one. I will add November and December in next month so I can report on the quarter as a whole. So you see it says 15 total. That is compared to 53 total for quarter 2 of PY19. They're down. I think it's a combination of, for whatever reason, people aren't pursuing training with the fervor that we thought they would right now. I don't know how much of it is COVID, how much of it is PUA related or extended benefits related. But yeah, November was really down. We have been reaching out to some of our, tried and true sources of referrals to see if we can generate some action. And the feedback that we're getting is referrals are down for them as well. And some of them, as you know, in Elmira, the people that are in the orange zone are really just not doing much at all. So that is that one. Referral sources, October 20. You see it broken down. We had Workforce New York, that's sort of internal enrollment, self-enrollments, workplace, and CPS. For November, the 4 that we had at the writing of this report, one was from one of our internal programs, one was a self-referral, one was workplace, and one was from the Steuben County Public Defender, which is novel. That's the first time they've referred somebody to us. So I'm happy to take that one.
Yeah, I wanted to ask about that. I mean, is that possibly an indication to reach out to Schuyler and Chemung's public defenders? And
it certainly is, and we have been doing that. Unfortunately, although it has yielded some good conversations, it hasn't really yielded referrals yet. But certainly that's an indication to hopefully springboard what success we have from this one, and sort of use that as an advertisement, if you will, for the other areas. I will say that this individual was referred and enrolled very quickly. The Steuben County Public Defender essentially ordered this person to apply for the program. And well, having your sort of mandate that you apply for a program and get a job is a great motivator, I think. Certainly in this case, the person was hot to move, which is good, I think.
Have you had a follow-up call with that defender's office to find out how did they hear, what led them to realizing you guys were there? And
yes, actually I did. That was the first question I usually ask is, geez, how did you hear about us?
yeah, okay.
And the individual, although the individual is up in the Montour Falls area, she was in court down here in Steuben County over at the Bath Courthouse. And the public defender had heard about us through Steuben County DSS.
Okay, good.
Yeah, I thought so. The one that came in after the writing of this report is also kind of an interesting one. I think this is the second time the person has reached out to me. The first time was for an individual that was only 13 years old, so not eligible for my program. But the individual that referred this person is somebody that I refer to as a community leader. She's a youth group leader in her church, and I think that it's good that we're sort of getting those sort of grassroots connections. But again, referrals are down. We're hoping that they pick up in December. And we're going to do what we can. We've already reached out, like I said, to several individuals, several agencies to see if we can generate more, a more active December. Down here in my enrollments chart, like I said, the top I reported 38. Down here I'm reporting 36 if you'll do the math. And that is because I had 2 that were re-enrollments and I haven't added them back in yet. I did see where they came into the subtraction, so they are there as entered follow-up. And I wanted to make sure that they had hit that measure before I added them back in so that I wasn't double dipping. So next month you'll see them put in the proper month so that the top and the bottom will be consistent again. Work experiences. I had 1 new start for November. We have several in the works, but none of them came to fruition. We have 2 that are sort of standing in line to get their results from their physicals back so they can start work experience trainings in childcare, but that's been a process that's been moving very slowly. One of them's been sort of waiting for the results for 3 weeks and the other for 2 weeks. But the one that we did have start, he started at Williams Honda, and I've already gotten really positive feedback about him. They do intend to hire him on at the conclusion of his work experience, which is kind of the holy grail of work experiences, in my opinion. And they've requested that we send them other individuals so that they can train them. And we had another individual start yesterday.
What kind of work? What's the?
Well, I'm really glad you asked. This first individual started as an auto tech. He's going to be changing oil. He's learning how to change spark plugs and things like that. And he's very excited about it. I'm very excited for him. And he's also doing customer service, running a register. But the one who started yesterday actually started in their finance department. He has some background in accounting, and he's taking classes, remote classes through Alfred University right now. And I'm excited about having somebody being trained as an accountant out there in the real world. So those are the two that we have at Williams Honda. In addition to that, we have people that are still, we still have a work experience in DPW in Canisteo. We have child care. We have one in a hardware store. And one in human services at Chemung County DSS, which I think is fun. So that's it for work experiences. Again, one for November, but we already have one new for December, and we're projecting 3 more at least. This next part, I'm going to say right at the outset, is going to be a little bit wonky. This will be the first time I've reported on this data. We started collecting it, or I started the project back in February with sort of tracking where my outreach specialists are reaching out to. My outreach specialists are my community liaison and my rural outreach specialist. So the first chart that you see is 2020 outreach. Numbers are approximate based on pre-project, 295 incidents of reported outreach in program 20. Now, again, that's a little wonky because 8 of those came in before PY20. And my rural outreach specialist has not been sending me the information attached to a date. So he's going to be doing that going forward. So I'll be able to break it down to you for you by month. You see here, I have it broken down by percentages per county. That is also a little wonky. I've asked them both to include that data going forward, or possibly I'll report out on it as Eastern, Central, and Western, because we don't really pay a lot of attention to the county lines unless we have to. But they didn't really include that data when they were compiling their outreach. They just sent me a list of people that they had, or agencies they had contacted. And if it didn't specifically say Schuyler County DSS or Chemung County Probation, I didn't include that in this graph because I just really didn't have the wherewithal to go through each town and a map and figure out which county every little town was in. But when I'm reporting out 295 incidents of reported outreach, I just want to be really careful to stress that that's what I consider meaningful outreach, not necessarily fruitful, but it wasn't just an email sent out into the ether. They actually made contact with a human. Now, in some cases, those humans didn't really do much with the contact, but it wasn't just blanket emails. These were actual contact made. Again, we're at 45, 15, and 40 for Chemung, Schuyler, and Steuben. but that's not super duper scientific. It will be more so for next month. And the next chart, preliminary data for rural outreach, not currently compiled by date of outreach, just sort of a blanket. Going forward, we'll compile by date, and community liaison and rural outreach will be reported on monthly. Now that's my plan, but I'm certainly very interested if all y'all have suggestions, mandates, if you want me to report out on that differently, if there's something you would like to see that I haven't currently mentioned, I'm all ears.
Respectfully submitted, Keith Guthrie.
Respectfully submitted, James Ignatius Guthrie.
Keith, it's Bill. I help me understand again what you mean by outreach. I understand you said emails sent out. And as I'm thinking about it, somewhere to the right of that chart, I mean, even a paragraph that says, outreach is considered to be XYZ, and maybe 3 or 4 bullet points or whatever, because I'm probably not going to remember this conversation next month, and I'm going to ask you again. So that's my question.
Excellent. So yes, I will absolutely include that next month, even though you're not going to remember it for this month. What we consider outreach is either an email that is answered, a phone call where they talk to the person, a Zoom meeting, a Teams meeting. Even though these are somewhat rare these days, we are still doing face-to-face meetings as far as outreach with agencies. If we're able to do it in accordance with everybody's safety protocols, we still do that. And Dominic and I actually did do an outreach last month that was face-to-face in person. So
that was the livestock auction, right?
Yes, sir. That was a livestock auction.
Well, that actually might be another graph of information, is just, broken down. If you have the bullet points on what you consider to be those outreach scenarios, then how, what percentage would be phone calls, what percentage would be emails, just to try to understand what's working and what isn't.
Yeah.
Excellent. Thank you. I will do that.
Just as a little bit of also background beyond just the youth program, we kind of have a phrase that we use, and we don't count contact unless it's a meaningful engagement, and we don't, really define meaningful outside of was it meaningful. So what we try to filter out, and you'll see this in any of our reports, whether it's youth program or business connections or any of those things. Meaningful engagement, which means really is defined very loosely. It's there was conversation, there was a back and forth, and it wasn't just a, we could blow up the numbers and send 1,500. We got a 1,500 year list right now. We could send 1,500 emails twice a month and show 3,000, quote unquote contacts. But really for us, that's our measure, and it's really hard to define that specifically, because what's meaningful with one employer or style might not be meaningful with another. And so we're not looking at statistical validity or reliability or anything on that. It's really kind of a professional judgment call. Was the contact, was the outreach, was a meaningful engagement with that employer or whatever? And if it was, then we can count it. So anywhere where you see that in terms of outcomes on our reporting, regardless, that really is our rather fuzzy bar, I guess. But
okay, awesome, thank you. So what I heard was is that for our next meeting, you will prepare, or you'll identify sort of your outreach scenarios so we can begin to track what's working. And I think this is pretty important. And Dan knows this, there's a lot of us in economic development that are concerned about the number of people that are not participating in the labor force and that are not taken advantage of training. So I think that there is, for us, this actually can play some double duty for us and really help us out. So that'd be great.
Wonderful, great.
All right. Any other questions for Keith?
I don't know if this fits here or somewhere else, but when we were looking at comparative statistics across the state, the question was, you know, could there be contact with another area that had better numbers than us to see what they were doing? I don't know if you've had a chance to do that yet or not.
Actually, no, I have not. That is on my big list of things that I need to do, but I did not get to it in between that and
Okay.
this.
Yeah. I don't know, maybe that could be an agenda item or something so we don't lose it. But
Yep, that's a great, thank you. And we will do that. Hopefully the minutes will reflect that. So we'll capture that. Thank you, Jeanette. Any other questions for Keith? Okay, Keith, good job. I'll entertain a motion to accept the report.
so moved.
Thank you, Jeanette. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Thank you. And so moving right along, our next report out is individuals with disabilities.
So I just want to bring this because I was very excited. So the WIB directors, we have bi-weekly phone calls across the state, and we bring in folks from either other states or from Albany or whatever. And not this last call, but the one before it. So 2 phone calls ago, we had a nice presentation report out, whatever you want to call it, from NIACE, which is the New York Employment. Don't ask me what the ESS means. But basically what it is New York State some time ago, I was actually here when they first kicked it off before. So it was 2013-ish. New York State actually started a statewide ticket to work program. And lots of workforce boards in the state who did not have ticket to work programs kind of joined through this consolidated programming. So New York State was actually the lead on it. OSOS was the data tracking, the outcomes, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. We did not join the New York ESS, NICE as they call it, back in 2013 because we had already set up ourselves as an independent ticket to work. And we had a very talented staff person, and we were actually, we had generated a fair amount of income, and we were right on teetering on the edge of sustainability in terms of a ticket to work program. You've done ticket to work, you know that's not an easy task to do. So we didn't join it back then. Well, I spent a couple of years away. I will tell you, the ticket to work program got buggered up. When I came back, it was really buggered up. And so we kind of had to, not only had we closed out our own ticket to work program, we hadn't joined the New York one. We had joined someone out of Washington, D.C. Why, I don't know. I wasn't here. I'm not even going to venture a guess. But bottom line, we had to close that out because the program, we weren't meeting our obligations. We weren't doing accurate case notes, and we got out of that. And so we closed our ticket to work program. Prior to that, then we kind of closed this out. But long and short is we were given the opportunity to join NICE. So we will be, as far as CSS as an agency, we will be over the coming weeks joining the NICE system and having a ticket to work program, although it's really, I guess, technically an employment network. But we will be firing that up. It will be low volume through the state system. We will probably never, ever reach any type of sustainability in terms of staffing because we're getting a small cut because New York is actually the lead.
Dan, excuse me a minute, but it may help to explain what Ticket to Work is. As I remember it, it was to help people on Social Security disability to transition to work environments with incentives.
Ticket to Work is
Okay.
yeah, Ticket to Work. So it's being bounced around Washington, but basically the Ticket to Work program or the Employment Network program for individuals who are on SSI or specifically SSDI, but are able to work either as a supplement to some of their benefits or maybe, transition to full-time employment and actually leave benefits. But it's a program that's specifically set up to provide supports and help folks who are collecting SSDI kind of either bring in additional money or maybe kind of break free and fully realize their interests and potential in the workplace. So the program, you don't get any money to run the program. What you get is you get performance benchmarks on the back end. So when you work with an individual who has disabilities and you help them with resumes and whatnot, everyone in there has a ticket. They can assign a ticket to a program. So if I have, an individual that's in our area, she might want to assign her ticket to CSS or assign her ticket to capabilities. I know AJ has one of these programs that they're really strong in. You can assign this ticket, and once you have that ticket and you begin working with an employment counselor, if we can help them manage that process, get them the training, get them the supports, and then place them, and we hit benchmarks in terms of sustainability in that person's work history, they've stayed on the job for 3 months, 6 months, whatever the case may be, then we get some benchmark payments on the back end. So that's really what it is. It's kind of doing what we're doing now, but it incentivizes strongly for us to really search out and find ticket holders that are not assigned and provide benefits to them. So it's a targeted approach to really make sure we're providing these types of services to that disabled population or that differently abled population. And I probably was very confusing, but that's what it was. It's a targeted programming. In our setup, because it will be part of the NICE system, there'll actually be, if they want to work with one of our team, we'll actually be assigning them their ticket to NICE. And then the OSOS system and all the data tracking and all the employment verifications and stuff, because of New York State's tie into the tax and finance, those benchmark payments will just kind of flow down as we go. It will generate small amounts of money. When and if we get there, we'll kind of design a plan on this. But my thought would be, and I certainly will present it to this group, is if we generate funds from this employment network, my thought would be, let's plow those resources directly back into this demographic slice and maybe do continuous improvements or maybe even some expansions of equipment and services to this population. But we're a long ways away from that right now. I've rambled on a whole bunch. I apologize. So that's what we're doing, and that's what I really would hope to do. My request, and the reason I put the red star next to this is I'm not sure if this is something probably the full board is going to need to give us permission to do. But my hope would be that this group, kind of particularly with our focus on individuals with disabilities, could see the value in doing that and really, maybe recommend to the board that we participate in this and that hopefully maybe plow any monies that we do get from it back into services specifically for this population.
Thank you, Dan. I think we'll open it up for discussion.
I would agree with partnering with NICE, being familiar with the program. It is complicated to run, and the numbers of people who are actually eligible and interested are small. So I would be in favor of partnering.
Okay. Others?
Just in terms of full disclosure, what I will say is there's a number of agencies in the 3-county area that offer employment networks under this Ticket to Work program. I mentioned capabilities. I'm not sure if the ARC, Chemung and Schuyler ARC has one. Pathways.
Schuyler used to. We got out of it because it was just a lot more complicated for the numbers we were seeing.
Yeah, I think AIM still has one. There's a couple of others out there. Pathways, I believe, has one. So in theory, we will be entering into some sort of essentially competitive, but I really don't think so, because I think if they're coming into the center, I think they're kind of our natural customer anyways. If they're already a Pathways customer, then Pathways has probably already worked with them on that front. But just in the interest of full disclosure, there are other agencies out there that do this, and it could be viewed a little bit competitive. So not that I'm opposed to that, I just am sharing it.
Right.
Is it, Dan, is it possible if you've got the customers potentially that you're talking about, if they're coming in your door and these systems are already in existence in the community, is it an opportunity to better engage those programs into the workforce system by not doing it and just improving that relationship?
So we, for the last 4 years, kind of since I came back, we've kind of funneled them to other partner agencies. We have a good relationship in terms of sending referrals over to capabilities, to the Tompkins workforce. They've got a really, really developed one that hits a lot of Schuyler County folks.
Vested at one point was doing the bulk of them. I don't know if they still are.
Yeah. Vested tends to scoop up the vast majority of them kind of in our area. And I don't want to say vast majority, certainly 51% or more. Vested sort of scoops up and does.
The whole point of the ticket is you have choice. I don't think it's going to hurt to have choices.
No,
Yeah.
there you go. Yeah.
Yeah, and I'll tell you, sometimes in our experience back in the time before time, we'd have folks that weren't happy with what they were getting for whatever reason from Vested, and so they would come to us. Then we'd have people that we working with decided that they want to consolidate case management under AIM, and so that we would transfer tickets over there. I'm not really looking at even attempting, quite honestly, to be self-sustaining in this. So for us, we're really just another option. If your ticket hasn't been assigned, if nobody is designated to be working with you, we would be happy to work with you, assign your ticket and go that way. If you want to do, capabilities, Tompkins Workforce, AIM, Pathways, whomever else, we're not going to stand in anybody's way, because we're not really trying to be. Back in 2012, 2011, 2013, because we were actually striving for sustainability, we had a little different approach in that realm. But now I'm really just kind of looking at, let's provide the services where we can. If we make a few dollars along the way, awesome. We'll plow it back into the services to these folks. Really kind of a very laid back approach.
Very good. Any other comments? All right, well, hearing none, I will entertain a motion that we recommend to the full board that the CSS Workforce go forward with this, with the ticket to work through NICE.
This is Joanne. I'll move it.
Thank you, Joanne. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Thank you, Jeanette. It's been moved and seconded. All those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstaining? Okay.
The ADA accessibility standards is really just on there as a placeholder, so we don't lose track of it until our career centers open up to the extent where we can really begin building on that.
Okay.
So.
Great. Perfect. Thank you, Dan.
Yep.
Next on the agenda is operations. So we'll hear the operator report, please, for November.
Okay, good afternoon, everyone. And thanks for having me. Dan is a super guest. Dan will bring up my little graphic here.
Yep.
But we're looking at some reports of some customer traffic, which you can imagine is a little slight in comparison to program years previously. So I'll wait for that.
Yeah, I'm just trying to get to the right one here. Hold on.
It's
I'm suspiciously close. There we go.
Version 2. Woo. Woohoo. So, in review of, take a look at program year. We have a comparison of 19 to 20, program year 2020, July through November. The data shows that we're seeing fewer customers, which can be expected. I think, obviously, with the pandemic, the loss of the UI foot traffic in the career centers, Department of Labor is not doing any reemployment services.
Okay.
They are still doing unemployment exclusively, although they are starting to come back and do some time in the center. They're doing their own work with UI. They are not doing any, seeing any customers. So we have the loss of that foot traffic, and again, limited walk-in hours for the Career Center also plays a factor. We're still doing 3 afternoons a week in Elmira and Montour on Monday, Wednesday, Friday from 1:30 to 3:30, and then in Bath on Wednesday and Friday, 10:30 to 3:30. So we still have some limited hours, limited capacity, only 2 customers at a time and for 30-minute intervals. So we're still at very limited capacity. It also shows that we've seen fewer customers than in previous years, obviously. We have served at this point. Last year, last program year, we had served 1,302, and at this point for this year, or this program year, 467. So we are definitely off to a slow start for this program year. You know, we've talked about different ways to maybe ramp up some outreach to engage some of the adult customers. We obviously have, you know, put out there different types of virtual workshops and the Meet the Employer, things of that nature. But further conversations we're thinking need to be had with Department of Labor staff about not only how do we reach out to the adult customer, but the dislocated worker customer, as obviously, as you see in the next slide, that too, over the last, you know, from last year, program year to this program year, again, seeing a significant decrease in the amount of new dislocated worker customers that are coming into the center. Let's see here. We have 372 fewer dislocated worker customers. And let me see here. I don't want to lose my place. If you drop down there, yes, thanks, Dan. November, the dislocated worker caseloads, they show that that too, very a heavy impact from the low enrollments of dislocated workers. You know, it's all telling that there's 103 fewer dislocated worker new enrollments this program year from last program year. And again, I think that coordination with Department of Labor, how do we start to engage the dislocated workers? What types of heads up? We've had some conversations about, we're heading towards, you know, the end of December is right around the corner. There are going to be several exhaustees with not just regular unemployment, but the pandemic relief as well. And talked a little bit with Department of Labor to see, is there a way we can maybe take a look at by county what that looks like? How many exhaustees are we anticipating in that time frame? How can we work with the local DSS? Because not only, you know, are they losing their unemployment, they're losing all income. They're going to be needing services, and how do we refer them to them? And that's and other services that they may need to tide them over. So it's a whole system approach with multiple partners, I think, so that we can be ahead of what could be a very chaotic time once people start to exhaust their benefits. And moving down as far as the WIOA activities, we had a total of 89 activities delivered for the month of November. Again, not very significant Not a very significant number. We've done, the counselors had done 26 assessment interviews, 10 individual employment plans, 15 information sessions. But what I will add is that taking a look at, so I had the staff take a look at when you look at these numbers and activities with customers, a lot of them, there are other things behind the scenes going on. So I've asked, and we will bump up the report to include such activities as self-service. So someone who comes into the center for, I need to fax unemployment paper somewhere, or I need to try to get a hold of somebody at the unemployment office. I need a 599 form. We did do a total of 24 self-services across the 3 centers in November. There were 7 face-to-face interviews of people just coming in unannounced, sitting down, 22 walk-ins. So I'm sorry, there were 22 walk-ins, 7 scheduled. 26 what we call phone meetings. So some of the services are initial stuff is being done on the phone and they're not coming in. We had roughly around 40 individuals calling into the centers for information about the centers. And I know that doesn't sound significant, but they're starting to call. So this is bumped up quite a bit. And now we're going to start to track it a little better. And that is, are you open? What are your hours? How do I sign up for this Meet the Employer event? So that we can bump up some of the participation. Our counselors are keeping we have a lead counselor who's sending out a weekly to our counselors. She is sending out a weekly agenda. Here's what we have for this week. Please reach out to any of your customers you're currently working with. Even just leave a phone message. Hi, it's so-and-so from the Bath Center, and here's what we have going on this week. Please give us a call if you'd like to sign up for anything, or go to the info box, which most of the customers that we're working with are aware of. So it's just trying to find some additional ways to provide some outreach when we're not getting the foot traffic.
Dan, do you have any ad money or marketing money? I'm thinking Facebook, generic kind of things that, there may be other platforms people are using now. I know things are changing, but.
We have, actually, it's funny to say that because we just went over some budgets, Patty and I, earlier today. We do have about $10,000 left in our outreach budget at the moment. So yes is the short answer to your question. The longer answer is we actually have a team that has been tasked with kind of getting some outreach materials, thoughts, slogans, approaches, and Keith is actually kind of the spearhead for that particular task force. So yes, we do have money, and we're actually planning a pretty good push on that. And we've got a team of folks who are doing it. So in the coming weeks, I think we'll have a better, I know we'll have a better strategy than what we have right now. And we will be doing kind of generic. The problem is we can't market.
Right.
All right.
But
so,
I'm thinking, part of what I'm hearing is people need to know you're open.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. So that will be part of it as well. We can invite people into the career centers, because that's the outreach. Are you currently out of work? If so, come to the career center because we're open. That's outreach. What we can't say is CSS, we're awesome, come see us. We have to specifically say, this is the service, come to us. And so that's kind of where Keith's team is parsing those words down to make sure that we're compliant. But we do have about 10,000 available to us between now and June 30.
Yeah.
And what I'm thinking, Dan, maybe for the counselors here, it might be useful, or Keith, if some additional conversation and put together some sort of menu of services and the various ways of providing those services. So with the limited hours, we could say, hey, did you know if you're interested in training, we can meet with you virtually to discuss your options, kind of thing, so that people are aware. They don't, if they're afraid to come out or whatever, that they know that they can come in and, or they can still make contact and get some answers to what they're looking for.
Yeah, no, that's good.
We're at, just so you know, in terms of outreach, one of the things that we are targeting is where you don't even have to call anyone to sign up. We're actually we're gonna put together some booking functionality. We're not quite there yet, so don't get too excited, but you'll be able to go to our website and actually book for this service at this time with this staff person, and it'll just pop onto calendars. So that's part of the initiative as well. So there'll be generic outreach, but there'll also be some ability for people to start self-driving and self-enrolling to some of this stuff. And so,
And the only other thing I want to make mention, you all have a copy of the workshop calendar for December. Again, our scrub of the workshops continues with a team of us going through and making some suggestions on edits for quality. I also wanted to make mention that the local DSSs, or the DSS in Chemung, and we will talk about this, we talked about it at the Montour site meeting as well, and that is getting workshop calendars to the appropriate counterpart at DSS, so that it's sharing with people that they're seeing, whether if they're not in contact or face-to-face contact, is there a way to email it? Just so that they can see there is some activity going on, and it may be another means for them to see that if they're continuing on, would like to continue on with their job search, that there are ways to reach out to people.
Very good. Thank you, Shelley. Any other questions or any comments for Shelley? Okay, we'll move on to the quality assurance and performance report, and we'll start with the youth monitoring and response.
Okay, so for the youth, I issued a letter. I gotta get my youth page.
Sorry about that, Rayanne.
Pardon me?
Sorry about that.
That's okay. So I started this review back in June and July, and it took some time to get through it. And I issued a letter to the program on September 14th. The program has returned a response on 11/20. The files that were selected were services and enrollments during the period of January to June of 2020. I'll just kind of summarize it. There were several findings. Many of the findings were high risk for disallowed costs. Many of the findings were repeat, and they were pretty systemic. So areas of concern were, there was one participant whose eligibility was in question. It wasn't documented properly. We had people, there were several unintended exits and then services provided after exits. There's a requirement for an individualized service strategy, which is basically the program plan for the participant. And it is basically like the prescription, if you will, for the services that we can provide. So if we provide services, it needs to be on the ISS. So the ISSs, there were several with components missing. There were elements provided that weren't on the document. Some supporting documentation and supporting documents and signatures were missing for some work experience, and the same to be true for supportive services. And then there was, the general, data entry issues of things not matching or up to par. So, given the seriousness of these findings, basically the program and quality assurance have been working together since then. We are, the program is reviewing their processes and procedures and systems. And I'm reviewing them with them. We're looking to see what is working and what is not working. What are they using the proper tools? Are they using the proper tracking and such? So we have been making some improvement in the priority areas. So for example, we want to make sure eligibility and prevention of unintended exits were our primary first and foremost tackle for processes. I have since seen some improvements in these areas. So the work that that I'm doing with the program lead is ongoing at this point. We're just going to keep tackling things as we go and hit all of these areas. Given the improvements that I've seen, I'm fairly confident that this can be turned around with these improvement strategies. All of the findings in this letter have been resolved and they are corrected. So the risk for disallowed costs has been minimized. And in Keith's response, if you can, one of the things that Keith did when he responded was he looked at the findings and he determined for himself. I usually determine whether these are systemic or, simple mistakes. But Keith really kind of reviewed, identified those that were systemic. And so those are the topics that we're working on together. So that's kind of my summary. If anybody has any questions.
So make sure I get this right. So at this point, all the findings have been addressed. I'm going to try and summarize this. All the findings have been addressed. And at this point, you've looked at this and determined what is chronic versus systemic versus just errors in, typographical type errors or small errors. And that, if I understand you right, Rayanne, you're confident that these have all been addressed at this point and that we won't see these findings in our next audit?
Okay. Yeah, you had me up until that last statement. So I am confident that those findings in this audit have been corrected. We are working to improve the process to kind of reduce these findings in the future. We will be able to find the errors through monitoring. So we do have an internal system that, I'm kind of the last ditch effort to find the big problems. So I am confident that the program will show improvements in future monitorings.
Monitor again. When do you do another review?
I am working this week to pull a sample. They will have a letter by the end of December.
Okay.
Okay.
I monitor quarterly. So each quarter I go in and I pull anybody enrolled and anybody who has had dollars spent. So all work experiences, all supportive services. So I heavily monitor those areas.
And is it enough concern to step up that monitoring more than just the quarter, or is that what you said you're doing?
I think we've stepped up the process improvements and the part of a process improvement is to kind of oversee the day-to-day activities of the program. So I think that we're working to make sure that there is a process to kind of for example, supportive services. So let's make sure we have a process where we know when supportive services are paid so that the program can have an internal check to make sure things are documented at the same time.
Right.
So we've stepped up that kind of work.
Okay. Other questions? All right, so we need to take action on accepting this youth monitoring and response. So I'll accept a motion to accept this report.
This is
I'll
Bill.
move.
All
I'll
right,
second that.
thank you. Thank you, Joanne, for making the motion and Bill for seconding that. All those in favor?
Aye.
Right.
Any opposed? Any abstaining? All right, thank you. Rayanne, you want to go with the adult dislocated monitoring?
Okay, gotta flip back. So for the adult, I issued a letter on September 30th. I got a response on November 13th. The time period of files reviewed were those who had training services between March through December of 2019. In general, there were no findings that would have disallowed costs. So that's a plus. The two heavy areas that have been consistent throughout, which have been provision of follow-up services and also performance outcomes reporting. Although they still are showing up on these reports, I am seeing some improvement. So so it's more, we're finally kind of making some headway. I think there's some staff that really got it. They're doing a great job, and other staff might need a little extra nudging in this area. I've provided additional training to those staff that still need that extra support. So again, I mean, they're still showing up, but I am seeing improvement. Another area in this, there was a large set of findings because one of the trainings wasn't properly closed out, and probably had that been done, probably the number of findings would have been reduced greatly. So that's an area where I worked with with Shelley so that she can view some reports so that she can kind of catch some potential findings by looking at reports and make that easier. And there was quite a few files in the sample that had no findings per file, which I think that's the first time that's happened since I've been monitoring. So that's a plus. Shelley, in Shelley's response, all of the findings have been resolved. And that's what I've got for that.
Okay. And so from your perspective, is there an opportunity, is this a training issue where it's just time and an opportunity to train the staff? I think that's the question. Is this a training issue from your perspective, or is it an oversight issue?
Well, I don't know about that, but here I think that what I would like to see as a next step is for those staff identified with specific issues, if someone could walk with them in real time. I think one of the issues is I'm monitoring months later. So, so as far as a next step, I think maybe an internal programmatic in real time review might be where they could go. Did that answer your question?
But it does kind of lead actually a little bit to what Judy's asking. Is it training? Yes, I think it really is some training, but the nature of what we do in OSOS and the fact that you have to do, and it's not intuitive. OSOS and the file systems are not intuitive. I can train someone now, but they may not bump into actually that particular incident until 6 weeks from now. And then 6 months after that, it's randomly selected in Rayanne's sample. And so you've got this huge time lag in there. So it is a training issue. And I think the solution that Rayanne's recommending with Shelley is that, maybe Shelley sit side by side, or maybe that same week, or, a couple of days after, or something like that. So they're catching the data input errors sooner, and it's in real time, and it's more meaningful, and hopefully that will encourage it to stick a little bit better.
And because I'm still a little rusty coming back into it, Rayanne has been exceptionally helpful. If I run into some real-time issue, I'm shooting it right to her. And rather than her say to me, okay, here's what you do, she'll say, let's get on a call, put the other person on the call too, and we'll walk through it. So I think over time, and like Dan said, okay, we resolved it today and we got it, and then we may not see it again for another 6-8 weeks, and then it's gone again. So,
Rayanne, do you have a monitoring tool that people can be trained to use as a self-monitoring to do that? I mean, is training people to use the tool part of the training? I know it's complicated.
Well, I do have a tool that I have shortened and can be used. We have put that in place for ISSs, or not ITAs. So yeah, we could probably, put that together and push that out so the staff can use.
Yeah, when you got complicated processes, checklists are a great tool to have, and I'm sure you have a checklist that maybe other people could be trained to use.
All right.
And we probably have checklists of checklists, truthfully.
Right.
Well, I think probably the best checklist is like lines up with the monitoring. So, if I'm the one that's going to keep score, then you're going to want to use my, the monitoring scorecard. So,
Right.
yeah, we could do something in the next couple of weeks.
Good.
That would be great. That's very nice. Any other comments or questions? Thank you. I'd like to entertain a motion, accept a motion for the monitoring and response report.
I'll move it, Jamie.
Thank you, Jamie. Second?
I'll second Joanne.
Thank you, Joanne. All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Any opposed? Yeah, I think our goal really is to, from my perspective, when there's just a one-off, it's not an issue. But when you have something that you see the word chronic or consistent or ongoing, that to me, from our perspective as a committee, is what should raise a concern. And then it's just a concern of how do we show that we're making progress towards resolving that. So Rayanne, appreciate any assistance that you can help with that. Our last item on the agenda is the operator RFP. Just as a reminder, we don't really have to have a product for several months, but we do have a meeting scheduled for December the 7th at 2 o'clock. And so I look forward to sort of beginning that process on the 7th. Dan, is there anything else that we need to know, or that we have that we've missed here in this meeting today?
Actually, we covered a tremendous amount, so I'm pretty good. The only thing I would say is our flex time, if you will, for the RFP is basically exhausted, because we're going to want to issue the RFP by the end of March. So we're about a quarter with the holidays. I mean, December, I hate to say it, it's only December 2nd, but December shot with the holidays. And we're going to come back. We're going to have 3 months to put all the final touches, get board, because we're going to have to move the RFP So this group needs to complete its work, and then it's going to need to forward it so that the board actually releases the RFP officially. February, March, April. So at the April board meeting is when we're actually going to have to, to stay on time and give ample time for respondents. So we got about 3 to 4 months left. And if we're going to do some major overhauls, there's going to be a fair amount of writing. So our flex time is how time flies, but it's queued up.
Okay.
And on that meeting on the 7th, I have another meeting. I'm actually facilitating at 3 o'clock. So I will probably be on for about 45 minutes on the 7th.
All right. Appreciate that, Bill. Really appreciate that. All right. I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
A motion, Bill.
Thank you, Bill. Second?
Second, Jamie.
Thank you, Jamie. All right. All those in favor say aye. And thank you very much for participating in today's meeting. Really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank
Bye-bye.
Dan, can I catch up with you?
Was that me?
Yes, Dan Porter.